Very welcome to another edition of Page 180. And guys, we're in that mode where we're discussing every single week TV shows again. June is absolutely stacked out the door. I can't remember a month with lineups like I have in June. I'm genuinely stressed, wondering what I'm going to do to cover. Like, we've got House of the Dragon, The Boys. We've got The Acolyte is coming. The Bear is back. Some amazing lineups here. But now we get to focus on one show in particular. But even then, like, it's getting pretty packed too, because we're going to have a bit of X-Men discussion as well. But it is Invincible season, and we are going to get to it. Joining me is a veritable X-Men like super team, you might say, because these episodes are so chock filled. We couldn't just rely on one person to get it all covered. So joining me to discuss the latest episode of X-Men, first off, it is none other than Dan. Dan, 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 Dan. Dan. That lineup. Very welcome back to Page 180. Looking forward to continuing to check in on your Invincible thoughts. And also as well, like, if we just keep really quiet, because last week he's left it out. I think he's still quite tender, but he is on the line. Kev Keen, welcome back to Page 180. Are you there? I don't mean to wake you, Kev. Are you okay?
What time is it?
It's 7:30 at night. I said we'll do a nighttime taping. Leave it decent enough. Give me a chance. Welcome back to
Low
Page
blows
180,
time,
Kev.
man.
Welcome
Page
back.
180 time.
Thanks for joining us a week late. Much appreciated. Good to have you.
I'm only a week late. I've
Good to have
done
you.
worse.
Good to have you as always on the
Thanks,
show.
man.
Looking forward to this amazing kind of, like I said, super team here. Kev, I want to check in with yourself
Yeah.
first, like, because we haven't had a chance to really. Obviously, Dan and I have covered part 1 of Invincible last year, and we had a chat about episode 5 last week. We haven't really got a chance to check in with yourself, apart from a brief chat we had about it in our top 10 TV shows of the year last year. What's your Invincible kind of origin story? We know Dan's obviously a big comic book reader. Would you be into the comics, or did you just jump in with the TV show? Did you watch it all when it first aired, or did you kind of catch up, or kind of what's your kind of Invincible origin story to bring us up to speed on where you're at and what angle you're coming at it from a fandom point of view?
Yeah, I'd never heard of the show or the comic till I think the first couple of episodes are out. And then a few of my friends were like, you have to watch this, you have to watch this. And I put it off. I'd say the show was finished about 6 months by the time I actually got to watch it. It was only when you saw the memes of like the think, they were just going around everywhere and people just kept on recommending. And I didn't have Amazon Prime. And that was one of the biggest reasons why, I suppose. But yeah, I usually get Amazon Prime around Christmas. There's usually a ton of stuff just to kind of catch up on with it now. Although I've got it now since The Boys has been out too, so I've kind of kept up with them. But yeah, so it took me a while to actually to watch it, and I was the perfect candidate for that first episode, being like, this is kind of a bit shit. Like, what's the fucking big deal about this till the end of the episode? And then I was shocked and was just hooked in immediately, like, as well. But it kind of had that same shock value as The Boys, I suppose, for me as well. And it's that kind of yeah, that kind of humor and that kind of just nearly Quentin Tarantino kind of like, holy shit, comic book blood everywhere. And it's just, I don't know, it just got me hooked from there. And the more it went on, the more, like, I think you've discussed last week, just like with Seth Rogen's writing, how relatable it kind of is as well, and how human some of the stories are in it. And it just it's a weird one to recommend to other people because it's such a well-written show, but it's animated and it's superheroes, and they kind of like, yeah. And I was even a bit like that myself, to be honest. But it's a wonderful show though, so I'm just hooked into it now. So that's my origin story, I suppose, with it.
Love it.
I'm a casual as folk person with it, basically.
The Seth Rogen verse of like Seth Rogen plus comics. Who knew it was like the evolution of these kind of stories? Dan, obviously, this is something you've been in with since the ground floor. Obviously, a huge comic book fan. Before we kind of get into discussing Invincible in the episode, is there anything you're reading now at the moment, or is there anything you're kind of particularly buzz about, that maybe kind of people who might hear your kind of discussions around the comics and stuff like that, and want to be get into the world of kind of fandom that you are at the level you are? Is there anything that you kind of recommend right now?
Well, after I finished my latest read through of Invincible for the show and just filling up that void between seasons, I got back into Spawn, which I'm sure a lot of people kind of remember from the poor 90s movie and the awesome 90s animated cartoon, which would have been something like a precursor to what Invincible is. Spawn is just ridiculously, unapologetically 90s. It took everything that was bad about it in comics and made it really, really cool and awesome. So there's a real nostalgia trip there. One of my favorite comic book franchises, which we've talked about recently, Coffin Comics, just released their once yearly Hell Witch story, which is quickly becoming over the last 6 years one of my favorite superhero or anti-hero comics. Got to read that the other night. Last year, it was my best independent comic of the year.
Ooh.
This year, it was just absolutely awesome. If you're not familiar with Coffin Comics, go check them out. They give amazing value for like what you're paying for, and they're unapologetically violent, sexy, in your face. It's just so much fun to read. So Spawn and Hellwitch, check them out.
Okay, good stuff. Great recommendations as always. Guys, we're going to be talking Invincible and X-Men 97 today. And of course, as the episode title would imply, we are going into the spoilerverse on both. So this is not a spoiler-free zone. We are going to be talking all things in both TV shows. We're going to start with Invincible. We're going to jump into X-Men 97. There will be time codes in the episode notes as well if you want to jump to anything in particular. But there is going to be spoilers, so don't add us if we spoil it. The one thing we won't spoil is we aren't going to go ahead and spoil potential future plots in the comics for either. However, look, we have a comic book expert in Dan here, so we are going to mine his knowledge and we are going to kind of use it to kind of frame and enhance and give us extra perspective and maybe tease some stuff that we might want to keep an eye out for as we go on, but we won't be spoiling kind of plot details and what's going to happen in future. So we're going to discuss it in one moment, but before we get into that, as we always do, we have to bring you back into what happened this week, and we're going to do so as we always do with our alt recap of Invincible Season 2, Episode 6, and the episode opens as the Lizard King actually does shoot Rex in the head. Fortunately, it turns out that Rex's superpower is he's essentially the Scarecrow from The Wizard of Oz and doesn't need a brain, so he just hulks up and hits the Lizard King with the big leg drop to take him down before being hospitalized himself. Shapesmith turns himself into a gazebo to buy Robot enough time to protect Adam Eve and build a bomb to disarm the Sequids and save Russ Livingston. The Martians try sentencing Shapesmith to death, so the Guardians run and Invincible takes out their ships. Debbie names Omnibaby Oliver. He now talks and she needs to hire a nanny, eventually settling for April, who is honest that Cecil sent her, but says she's loyal to Debbie, and I'm sure that's completely true and going to go really, really well for Debbie. While Rick has undergone the Donald effect, no, by that I don't mean he's an insecure orange-haired twat who wants to be a dictator but gets too easily distracted pissing on hookers. I mean, it effectively now makes him William's literal fuck doll. Amber and Mark's relationship seems equally messed up. Things just aren't the same as they confide in Eve and Rosenbaum about their fears about their relationship's future. Amber is already getting screwed as Mark is clearly going to end up rebounding with Eve, and her only real revenge fuck option is with some gay guy or an old dude who was friends with Mark's genocidal dad. After a scuffle with a grieving immortal I don't know, I haven't really workshopped saying that out loud. It looks better written down. Alan returns for a catch up with Mark, who can't help with the Viltrumite invasion because he's having girlfriend problems. And Mark, that is literally the best reason to leave the planet, you absolute rookie. He does share Nolan's books, though, which seem to have some clues about Viltrumite weaknesses. In Viltrum, we learned that Nolan hasn't been executed and is offered the chance to rejoin his people, but he stays silent. I wonder if one of the books has a chapter in it about plot armor. Plus, poor Russ Livingston is home in his apartment when he pukes out a rogue Sequid who again possesses him like a crazy ex who doesn't realize it's over. Enough, Angelina. Our time together had its moments, but it's time for you to move on. Meanwhile, in the post-credit scene, we catch up with Angstrom Levi, who makes like me on a WrestleMania night in the woodshed and says, it's good to be home. And ladies and gentlemen, that was Invincible. Season 2, episode 6. It's not that simple. Let's get talking about the episode. Dan, last week we caught up on episode 5, and I think we agreed that made like exciting, great to have Invincible back. TV show is always like the worst episode of Invincible is going to be better than the best episode of a lot of TV shows. But there is a lot going on at the moment. What was your thoughts on episode 6?
Great episode, really truthful to the comics. It just was very, very entertaining. But I'm gonna flip the script here because I'm very, very curious. Last week I was like holding against every whim I had to say something about Rex, and you were like, they're not just gonna shoot him because they were just in the episode. And it was just the whole time they're just biting my lip, poker facing it, so I couldn't give anything away. And I was like, he gets shot, but he just gets better. So when it happens, what was your reaction? I'm going to ask the question this time. What was your? I'm still in there watching the episode of me. Please tell me what you felt when Rex got shot. I'm dying to know.
I hated it, but I fucking loved it because it was perfect subversion of our expectations. It was brilliant because again, it just hammered home this show could do fucking anything. Now, having said that, was I mad about the fact that he just basically stood up from getting shot in the head? And again, now you're having arguments online and stuff like that where it's like, actually, this person in 1973 did get shot in the head. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, that's a superpower we didn't know about or whatever, or he has super healing strength. I felt they undermined themselves a little bit by just having him get up. I think if you're going to do it right and kind of go, holy shit, like they set it up where they told us he's definitely not going to get shot and they went ahead and did it. It was the most shocking thing that could have happened there. Ultimately, net win. I'm happy to see Rex still alive. I like the arc he's going on. And it was an amazing moment because I'm just there. Ah! But if you're going to kill someone, you have to kill them or else the shock isn't real. You know what I mean? It's like if the Red Wedding, if, Rob Stark got up and was just like, oh, geez, fucking stomach, lads, that is fucking rotten. You know what I mean? It's like, no, that's undone the shock of it all. So, but at the same time, it's not a cliffhanger. It's the start of the episode. And again, it happened. So I can forgive it. I did love the moment though. But yeah, that's me. Episode 6 though, your kind of overall thoughts of the episode. Were you a huge fan?
Yeah, well, I was a big fan. I liked how they continue the action with the sequids, and I liked how they once again they have this ability to take different storytelling elements from the medium of comics and relate it very well to the TV show. And I think they did it really well here. I was waiting for stuff to go a certain direction, and which it didn't go. I thought we were going to get like a different direction in the storytelling. No, me knowing where this is going to lead from reading the comics, so it kind of kept me on my toes, which I really enjoyed because when you do know the ins and outs and you spend time not only reading these books but familiarize yourself with like fan theories, what the community expects from stories like this, it's very hard to be surprised. So thinking it was going in a different direction this episode, I was able to kind of maybe sit back and be more of a fan, going the continuity is taking a slightly different route. So I was enjoying that. So for that reason, and just with how good the season has been, if you include part 1 of season 2 as a whole, it's just awesome. Yeah.
Okay, Kev, we haven't really got a chance to check in on your thoughts yet on either of the episodes. So, see, episode 5 and 6, I guess, combined. How are you feeling about part 2 of season 2 so far?
Same as you guys, absolutely just adore it from the get-go, especially like last week's one. I was kind of it has the most like horrifying, one of the most horrifying scenes I've ever seen in my life in that show, and with Shrinking Ray, just from sound effects, I think alone. But to go back to your point, I suppose with Rex not being dead at the start of this, I totally agree with you. Like it kind of undermined it a little bit, having him kind of survived. Well, I thought anyway, and same with Shrinking Ray as well. But I'm kind of hoping they'll do something like they'll have like insane PTSD or something from it, because that's the kind of show maybe this is. Because like you could see, I think in the ICU, she was just all cast bandages. I presume all her bones got broken inside this guy. But the Rexian getting killed at the start, though, I thought was like the perfect start to this episode, because when I went back to the sequids, I thought my heart was in my mouth the entire time, because I was like, oh, if Rex is gone now, any of these guys can go. Like Shapesmith, when he was doing the tent thing, I was like, this guy's going to get the most gruesome death possible here when he was just trying to hold on at the end. Now, it didn't happen, but your brain kind of thinks anything can happen here, and I love that about the show. Like, nobody's safe. It's like the Game of Thrones thing you said. So yeah, that's what I absolutely loved about this. It's just, you just don't know.
Yeah. I love when Invincible's on. Again, the worst episode of this show, better than 90% of the best episodes of most other TV shows. Minute to minute, it's great. I've got concerns though. And again, that isn't to say that I don't enjoy it, but similar to what I was saying last week, there is so much they're trying to pack into this. Like, it feels, again, I don't know, I haven't read I own the compendium, but I haven't read it. But it feels like they're trying to fit full comic book arcs into like 2-minute scenes. Like, there's so many things. And again, maybe it's because I notice it a bit more because I have to write the alt recap and kind of prep this show and stuff like that as well. Mark alone has 3 different plots going on. You know what I mean? He has the Amber Love Triangle. He has the, his Viltrumite mission. And then he has obviously the Oliver storyline and Debbie. Adam Eve's got like 2 different storylines going on. And that's kind of saying, we assume that the thing with her parents is sorted, but again, they can just dive back to that. But then there's like kind of, who is she and her whole identity crisis. And now there's, the Rex storyline. Is she going to go with Rex? Is she going to go with Mark? And then she's kind of caught up in Amber's storyline as well. You've got checking in with Viltrum, you've got Oliver, and again, like, don't get me wrong, there's a part of this that I love, and I trust the creators to bring it all home and kind of do it in a way. And like, again, they do throw a lot out there, and I liked it about season 1. But I think season 1 just had a much better focus because it was about Mark's learning his powers and Omni-Man is evil, and is anyone going to find it? And they were kind of the running themes that were going on here. Like, when Angstrom Lever showed up at the end, I'm like, oh yeah, like, and I'm like, there's only 2 episodes. How are they going to make him relevant? Like, they could have just pushed him to season 3, like, because like I don't know a lot about him anymore. Like, he was in kind of the first episode and kind of thrown away a lot. And it's just, they're just throwing stuff at me. And again, like, it's in the best possible way, because it feels like they're just so excited to tell this story that they're like, I'm going to throw Amstrom in here. We'll do this and we'll do this. And it's going to be amazing. But like, sometimes it's better to just narrow your focus, because even a lot of the things that they're touching on, I feel like I want more of it. You know what I mean? The Alan storyline, like, again, it was good to check in with Alan. It was good for Alan to get back here. I enjoyed every part of that storyline. But I'm like, it feels so urgent. That whole deal right now, like, Mark's task that was the cliffhanger for part 1 of season 2 hasn't even been mentioned. He doesn't even seem particularly, now I get the fact that he has a lot going on in his personal life and he's a teenager and that whole kind of trope, but I feel like he should be giving a bit of attention to that, in that, his entire existence and Earth's entire existence are dependent on his next steps, and his decisions, and he doesn't seem to even seem that enthused about like making them or thinking about it. Doesn't seem to be on his mind. And I get it, because he's in 3 different storylines, and so there's just so much going on. I just feel the show is very busy. It almost feels somewhat apologetic for being away for 2 years, because they're like, we'll give you loads and we'll just throw Invincible at you. Again, love it minute to minute. Love it scene to scene. The writing is still A1. It's still the right amount of hilarious, excellent action. The characters are all good. I just want more meat on the bones. It feels like a highlight reel right now. It feels like we're going over here for 5 minutes, then we're going here for 5 minutes. We'll do this and we'll do that. And you're getting, it's almost like a wrestling show type format. You know what I mean? Where you're checking in on various storylines and they all get a little segment and they just tip along those like 8 different storylines that they're trying to progress. But a show like this, I feel, should really make me care about the one thing, like superhero. And this was, again, the likes of this and The Boys are rewriting the script for what superhero TV shows are looking like, and I enjoy that. I enjoy the way they go at their own pace, they follow their own beat, they don't go with the typical archetypes. But at the core of this, I think superhero shows work at their best when it's like there's one huge existential threat, and then you of course you should have different character beats, you should have different character motivations, you should have side quests and this and that and the other and dynamics. but I don't know what the threat is. Is it the Sequids? I thought we beat them, but they're back now. Is it Angstrom Levi? I thought he's there. What's going to happen with Viltrumite? They don't seem particularly arsed coming back to Earth. You know what I mean? They're like, yeah, it's got a lot going on, right? We'll just check in and pick up the pieces at the end of it. You know, it just feels like by trying to do everything, they're not necessarily achieving one thing really well. And that's the only thing that's kind of, it's not concerning me because I love this show and I can't wait for the next episode. But I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you think I'm being a bit harsh there, Dan? What do you kind of think about that?
I do get what you mean. It's setting up a lot, and there is like a lot to come. But once again, without giving out spoilers, any concerns you have, these like railway lines are going to converge into a very solid, like kind of national track.
Okay.
So, we're just going through the more densely populated area. So any of your concerns, I would say, and that goes to anyone who's listening to this, don't worry about it. Just go along for the ride for the time being, because a lot of stuff is going to make sense. But the great thing about it is, go with the story going where it is. Maybe a lot of stuff in a good way is not going to make sense. There's going to be a lot of surprises, I would say, coming up soon that are going to result in just a really, really enjoyable viewing experience.
Okay, you've made me feel a lot better very quickly. Thank you. That's exactly why I choose you.
That's what I'm
here for. I want to talk about the Sequids and that whole storyline because there's a couple of things here that, like, again, enjoyed it minute to minute. What I really liked is kind of one moment I just loved, I thought was very underrated, was the Immortal trying to be the hero. I really do like how much he sucks. Like in everything he does everything wrong. But like he tries to be the number one alpha dog, which again is probably the, before Omni-Man particularly, is probably the role he spent. I heard like a podcast talking about it. It's like, you've been the top dog for 1,000 years, and now all of a sudden Omni-Man comes along and he's the top dog, and then like Omni-Man's gone and now Mark's the top dog. But it is funny to watch. But he's kind of like, he takes the ball and he's like, I'm gonna bring it over the line here, and Mark just goes, I'm faster, I'm stronger than you, it. Just give me that. I'll sort it. I enjoyed that aspect of it, and I enjoyed that kind of interplay. I did feel a couple of things though, a couple of concerns where, first off, like, just, I don't know what else they could have done, but the fact that they just needed to build a thingamajig to kind of beat them, I don't know if it felt like enough of a payoff to do a to be continued. I wouldn't have mind, like, again, like with the to be continued, you're expecting like shit's going down, and then it's like, no, that's the exact ending I probably would have predicted, like, for that exact interplay. And then bringing them back in the end, I'm like, okay, you're running it back. I get that there's an extra threat with they're now on Earth and they can take over everyone. I'm not sure how the hive mind stuff works. But I was kind of over them and ready to move on to Angstrom or something else. Kev, what was your thoughts? How are you feeling about kind of the Sequid invasion? How's it all kind of landed for you?
Yeah, I'm kind of a bit confused about how they work actually as well, because if they're back on Earth now and there's the one guy has been infected, but that spaceship that's full of them now, he can control all them. Or can you explain that better, Dan? Because I was a bit confused by that. I was like, what's the threat of kind of like one of them here on Earth?
So with the Sequids, their hive mind isn't active until they have a host, as they roughly explained. So going by the comic story, yeah, you're totally right, Kevin. Right now, the Sequids are, they are all connected, regardless, it seems to be, of where they are. So there is that Martian spaceship full of them, and they have their primary host on Earth. But regarding the Sequids, once again, not giving anything away, if you're to relate it to a more universally identified story like Spider-Man, the Sequids are closer along the lines to what you'd get out of a character like Rhino. They're the character that, pose a viable threat when they need them to, and they pop up whenever. So the Sequids, but how they're writing story, they could be in the next couple of episodes, or they could even put them off till next season. I don't really know, but they're going to be one of those, okay, we need like something to pose a threat. Let's get that going, and that varies, and it does get interesting. I don't know how they're going to do it, but I don't know if we'll see the Sequids next episode, but we could see them after that, but we may not see them the season after that.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for saying that. But yeah, apart from that, like I liked the tension they built with the tent, with Shapesmith's tent and Robot. Even though you said it was a bit of a like just the device that Robot built, I thought that just added extra tension because he's completely vulnerable if they get in then as well. And I quite liked that about that kind of MacGuffin, I suppose you could call it, of this device that he has to build. But it was just the time constraint to that and him being so vulnerable. I thought that was actually quite good, to be honest.
Yeah.
With the sequence, I thought it gave it a bit more attention.
It's another thing that again we're not getting a lot of Robot, and we did get like a lot last season and early in part one. Like that was another thing that I felt the show focusing on so many things. Like he just kind of said, "Oh, I felt really vulnerable being in my own skin," and then Monster Girl's like, "Shut up." And then it's just like that's it. And it's like I feel like he's got his whole thing going on as well. And I'm like, slow down and let me see how Robot's doing. You know what I mean? Because that's a character that they made me care about. So they actually, and I wasn't even thinking of that, but it's just when you brought it up, I'm like, oh yeah, he's traumatized. And he got basically a line to be like, basically, I'm traumatized. And then it just kind of never really did, never went anywhere after that. But really interesting stuff. Let's talk about something that did get a lot of airplay, and it's, you know, I can't criticize this show as saying it doesn't focus or care on the character beats. It absolutely does. Like, there's a whole love triangle kind of going on here with Mark and Amber obviously having difficulties. Mark and Eve seem to be in that weird kind of do we have feelings for each other kind of vibe. You know, and then there's Eve and Rex as well. So it's kind of a more love square if like one half of the square or one quarter of the square has brain damage. But like it's it's an interesting one. Dan, what are your thoughts on kind of how this is playing out in the show?
This is the one thing that I'm finding a little bit tedious. I feel like it's kind of drawing itself out a little bit long because I've already discussed that Amber can feel a little bit irritating. I really liked the comics interpretation of her because she was more like this all-American girl, and I think a lot of the traits that Eve had in the comics were kind of borrowed by Amber.
Right.
So I do have a feeling like with like maybe shows like The Walking Dead or what we can assume might have happened, we keep mentioning Game of Thrones, that they might diverge from the core material. And they may be setting that sort of stuff up. I mean, one example being we talked about the controversy of Shrinking Ray's death in the comics last week, and I was shocked when it was like, hey, Shrinking Ray's still here. So not only did we get this sort of like, you know, oh, we're sorry we wrote it so badly in the comics, let's show you her dying. And it was like, actually, we know you more of an apology than that. The character's coming back. I was, as Van, go, that's crazy. So I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt with the love square, which I love. I love brain damaged love square. Jeez. So I do think that they might diverge from the main story that like maybe like the fans who've read the comic read to keep us on our toes. So I'm interested to know where it goes, but like you said, with so many story beats going on, um, I'm more interested in where Mark's going, where Nolan's going, how they're going to approach Oliver now that I can actually say his name. So yeah, it's not my core interest, and it's the one thing that I'm a bit meh about for sake of a better word.
Kev, your thoughts on the brain damage low square? I think we're just gonna stick with that.
Brain damage love square.
It's yeah, for me it's definitely the weakest plot point I think of the show. And like I know you guys had a big rant about Donald last week. I fucking love Donald.
Okay.
Yeah, I do. I've got a lot of time for Donald. But yeah, with the love square of brain damage, as far as that goes, I liked kind of how nearly Disney movie they did it, of like the two different scenes, kind of like they were nearly having the conversation with each other. It was cute, like, but at the same time, I didn't really care all that much about it either.
Yeah.
It's with heart's not invested in them at all, really. And I think Amber has been kind of poorly written. She just seems very needy, and you're gonna like, they could write her a bit better than this. But yeah, I'm far more interested in the Donald and potentially and Rick storyline, I think, as well. I think that's really intriguing. Like Donald for me, I know you like you as
No,
well, you
carry on,
especially
go
Rick.
for it.
you were gone on a bit on last week. For me, especially in the first season, he kind of felt like Clark Gregg's character
Right.
in like the Avengers and some of the early Marvel movies as well of Coulson. And he was always kind of the one that was kind of like looking out for Debbie a bit, and then he had this big kind of sacrificial thing at the end of her, a self-sacrifice. And I'm a sucker for anyone doing a self-sacrifice kind of thing. But now there's like I talked earlier about the horror of shrinking Ray, her death, but not really death last week. His finding out that he's a robot is this insane like psychological horror to me. And you don't know who you actually are. You don't know how many times this has been done. And I'm all in with that. I think that's a really interesting and intriguing storyline. And then with Rick as well, he's going to have this existential crisis, down the line he's going to find out. And Donald, I think, will be there to kind of maybe help him hopefully through that. But that's the storyline I'm kind of looking forward to now with Donald.
I was more intrigued by that storyline this week because you're adding the second element with Rick. You're making it into not the Donald show. You're making it into something else. So, yeah, I'm willing to give it a chance. I'm willing to give anything here a chance. It's nothing that I actually disdain.
You disdain Donald pretty bad
what I
week.
disdain about it is some of his choices. What I disdain is like I'm having a little bit of an existential crisis. Slit my wrist. And it's just like, not like, why is that stage one? Why is that stage one? Where are your eyes?
He's a robot.
Where are your why does he not have eyes? Like, it's just weird. But like, no, it's I don't like I'm interested in it. I'm interested in it. Like, what is this program? It's so fucking cruel of Cecil to put Donald in that position. I really like the Cecil character. I really like him kind of behind the scenes pulling the strings. And I'm into that side of things. If that just becomes a bigger part of the Cecil narrative and his complexity as he's like technically one of the good guys, but also an asshole. He could be corruptible. Like, there's a lot going on there, and that seems to be where the Donald storyline is going. Then I can get into it. So I'm open to be sold by it. I much agree as well about kind of the brain damage love square. I'm like, there was a couple of like little cool bits. Like, for example, I loved when they got their coffees, they had the little froth at the top, but the design of it was two broken hearts. Just a little like touch that they
Not
had.
subtle.
Yeah, it wasn't subtle, but it was like, it was a nice touch. And again, it was tastefully done. I have a prediction with this. And again, I don't know, Dan, like if you know where this is going.
Probably just hide my face so I don't give away anything.
Please be poker faced about it. But or maybe it might be a deviation. I feel like it seems like too obvious that Mark and Eve are going to get together, but just because something is obvious doesn't mean that it's wrong to do. It could be quite good. Like, so I'm not against it. I would like the time they're putting into this, especially when they're neglecting so many other areas. Like, where are the twins, lads? What's going on with the twins? We had a big cliffhanger at the end of part 1 and we haven't checked back in with them. What's going on there? But like, if they're giving this so much time, I would like it to pay off. I think my slight prediction for this is I think Amber's going to become a villain. I think something's going to happen here. She's going to try inherit powers of some sort. And I think there's something interesting there. I hope it's that. I hope this isn't just like kind of a cheesy kind of character. Cause I agree with what you're saying, Kev. She's kind of written like, and this show, and it's a shame because this show in so many ways is so progressive and forward thinking. And especially, I think they've updated a lot of their views because we were speaking last week about how essentially the original text is 20 years old, which again is kind of dated now, and they need to kind of get that. And I think they've done well with that. But she is kind of written like a 90s, superhero movie girlfriend, where it's like all of my motives and everything about me is related to my boyfriend, the hero. And it's like, there's nothing, she doesn't really have anything else going on. And anything she does have going on, like last week we spoke about how her grandfather died off screen. It is off screen. It's her saying, well, this happened in my life. But we don't see that or care about that. And again, as much as we can empathize with people going through that stuff, you don't see it, so it's not something that you actually connect with. So I hope there's a bigger payoff here. I'd like her to become a villain. I think Invincible is messy and crazy enough to do something like that, and I think it would be a wild swing and a wild character turn. So I could get into it if there's something like that up their sleeve. But if it's just a generic kind of love triangle situation, or if her and Rex are both left heartbroken because Mark and Eve ended up together and they end up together, like I don't know, I wouldn't be into that. That feels a bit too normal for this show. I feel this show is better than that, and this show should kind of, and this story should kind of get away from those typical kind of comic book tropes. One thing I want to talk about that is very untypical of a comic book character is Alan. Because we saw him this week, got a lot of time. And I really enjoy Alan as a character. But one thing I want to talk to you guys about is Seth Rogen as Alan, because there's pros and cons here. Okay, on one hand, Seth Rogen, really fucking funny guy, gets it. I like having him in these projects. He deserves to be in it. It's an extra bit of name value for the show that is just absolutely stacked with characters that you almost forget that Seth Rogen plays this really important character here. And he's a genuinely really funny character. Like, I love that moment where it's like, my thing only works between me and someone else. You can't talk. It's a design flaw. I'm told an update is coming. Or the douchebag conversation. Or it's like, in my planet, a sock means fucking. Like, it's like, he is very, very funny. But does that undermine Alan as a superhero? You know what I mean? Having him be that funny, because he's supposed to be this. We got this whole backstory to him, and now we've got this revelation last week where it's like Alan is one of the main guys fighting the Viltrumites, and I kind of want someone to be a bit more badass, and I want someone to be a bit more like serious. You know what I mean? It's like, you remember Santino Marella nearly won the Royal Rumble a few years ago, and we got excited in the moment. We're like, Santino Marella's going to win. But if Santino Marella won the Royal Rumble, we'd be like, I don't want to watch him in the main event of WrestleMania. Like, he's a funny comedy character, but that's about it. And that's.
But what about when Santino Marella nearly won the Elimination Chamber, though?
Yeah, that was really good too. He was very good. But he is like Alan, I guess, is the Santino Marella of this show, and I feel that he's supposed to be more important. And I think Seth Rogen, while it is genuinely funny, I think it undermines the importance of Alan. Or am I missing the point, Dan, there a bit?
There's a reason, I guess, why he is like this, and I definitely can't go into it without getting a lot of stuff. But once again, all I will say is there's a sizable payoff as to why he might just be like a bit too much of the comic relief right now. It works, and right for the time being, I will just say once again, like a point made earlier, just definitely enjoy what he comes up with, because Alan was a major fan favorite, especially of mine in the original text. And the way Seth Rogen is playing him is absolutely fantastic, and I just love it. There's certain things they're cleaning up, like the whole thing within the comics. Tatus does not kill Alan; he just goes into a coma, and then when he comes out, he's stronger. But they just kind of hint to it. Whereas this one, the whole thing about like Tatus cutting off his machine shows that every time Alan like reaches a kind of critical level where his morality is or his mortalness, I should say, is jeopardized, he gets stronger. So there's stuff that will come up that will kind of, prove like a nice curve for the character. But for the time being, just enjoying him as the goofy alien that's stronger than he should be it's just the way he is, and it makes sense.
Okay. Again, making me feel better. And what makes me feel better is when you're telling me these things, you're unmoved by this. You know what I mean? Because I know if they weren't native, obviously you can have a degree of trust with this show. And I think that's why I can feel these things, but still love it week to week and look forward to it week to week, because it is the creators behind the comic getting into, creating it as well. But as well, like, given the love that you have for the source material, if this wasn't nailing it and they were getting it wrong, I know you wouldn't be like, no, it's great, it's fine. You'd probably be the most pissed of any of us about like even little things. So, okay, that's very reassuring. What are your own thoughts, having not read sorry, Dan, go ahead there.
And I was just saying, just as a real quick example of one thing they did really well that was better than the source material, this one was when Mark was reading Nolan's books. It was really bad in the comics. Basically, you get one picture on a page and then a wall of text, which would really hurt the flow of the story. So just that's another just example that I wanted to bring up about how they actually did these in a narrated, like a flashback.
Yeah.
And it really, really worked. So that's one way where it was better. So I have faith in what they're doing.
Okay, good stuff. Again, making me feel a lot better. Kev, are you feeling the same as me? You just kind of enjoying the ride with Alan? Like, how are you kind of taking it without, like me, not knowing what's coming up next?
Yeah, Alan for me kind of just felt like I don't know what age I suppose Alan is, so he kind of just felt like a fairly kind of maybe the same age as Mark kind of thing, but like thrusts into this role that he just has to like we don't know his backstory at all, so I
Yeah.
kind of just assumed it was like that, and he's maybe just a bit immature, I suppose, like Mark. But like you know the way you'd have some characters in movies and TV shows where you're just like this is just say like Tom Hanks and I can't see anything but Tom Hanks, and you could Seth Rogen could fall into that category, but for some reason with Alan it just works like he has to be that voice, and
Yeah.
it's brilliant. Like I really like that. But with regards to anything else, I suppose yeah, with the stories and the other bits and pieces with the books, I loved that. I thought that was amazing. Especially like with the was it the Infinity Gun? It's called
Mm.
where like he has to be like super accurate, and then he ends up blowing up a sun with it then as well. It's like oh shit, this fucking thing's like fucking powerful. So I like the way that was portrayed, and I'm not going to be able to remember the names of whatever those monsters were in that planet, but I liked that they were kind of like these. They're maybe like Infinity Stones, I suppose, aren't they? Of like these little bits and pieces that can maybe damage Viltrumites then as well. So it's cool.
Yeah, I do like that aspect of it. It's yeah, Infinity Stones came to mind. Also, kind of Horcruxes, like
Yeah,
Harry Potter, where there's
exactly. Yeah,
like
yeah,
there's these searches across the world for different things that can kind of, if put together, could build
yeah.
an army could take out the Viltrum Empire. So yeah, I like how that's coming together. I'm a big fan of that, and also mindful of stuff that Dan has told me as well. That seems like that could just like could totally gate crash those plans too. So yeah, very excited about what's to come. Let's check in then with Viltrum and Omni-Man here. There's a bit of yaying because I was intrigued about how, like, why didn't they kill him at the end of part one? A concern of mine was that they would kind of just be like, yeah, like he can't die just yet, but we're gonna kill him, rah. And that is what happened in a way where you kind of got this spiel about like a Viltrum must be executed with honor at full health, which gives them more time to recover and stuff like that as well. But I don't care because Omni-Man is probably the coolest character in this show, so I don't give a shit. Like it's not anything that keeps him alive, I'm okay with because he's a great character. Kev, your thoughts on kind of the check-in we had with Omni-Man? Is there any kind of predictions or kind of how are you kind of feeling with that whole story?
I'm kind of the exact same as you. I was when I cut back to him, I was like, okay, what are they going to do here? How's he going to get out of this? And that explanation of oh, they have to be at full health to get an execution. It was one of those things where like, fuck it, yeah, okay, I can go along with that. Like, I don't mind it. I honestly have no idea where they're going to go with this with him. I because even it said at the very last bit, I think he just had fist clenched, and then his eyes kind of just open, and he looks kind of annoyed. But you're like, okay, he's gonna do something. Oh, he was able to, I think, dent the floor at the very last scene. I was like, oh, that's interesting. So I'm presuming he's gonna break out of there at some point. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was one of those things where I don't care. Fuck it, let's just be entertained.
Floors in Viltrum, it seems like they should have planned for this. You've got Omni Man in there. You need to make the floor stronger and more reinforced. You know what I mean? I feel like
It's
the
the equivalent of
steel.
humans making floors out of marshmallows. It's like, let's use steel. No, that's not who did that?
Yeah, if he can dent that while he's still recovering, you're probably fucked, lads. Like, yeah, but again, I don't mind. We got a shot at Angstrom as well at the end. He had a new suit. He said, "I'm home." Um, no real indication where that home is. One little thing that I kind of loved was in the university walkthrough. A little Easter egg was he seemed to walk through the Walking Dead universe. It looked very
Yeah,
like, particularly I remember it was one of the comic books. I think it was actually one of the covers of one of the comic books. So I loved it. Real nice little nod there, and as well as Robert Kirkman. So you can't get mad. Dan, is this something that's just like again? Do you expect this to be a fun Easter egg that like maybe we'll jump back to? Because again, in Invincible, just because something was in the episode this week doesn't mean similar to the Sequids. Or is this an impending threat? Like, is this something that we need to now be? This is gonna take over? Maybe this is probably going to be the end of the season, or is this something that you don't know the next time we'll see Angstrom after this? Are you just reminding us, or do you think it's a big deal that he's coming back now and this is going to be very relevant to the last 2 episodes?
If you take the post-credit scene as a separate thing to the actual show, which I think most fans do, I was waiting this entire episode for Angstrom to show up. So the fact that he showed up in the post-credit scene, I was like, okay, the path it makes sense again. And I don't know really kind of how they're going to end this season. I've got a lot of theories, but I said before, Angstrom he's a significant villain in Invincible. So once again, now that they're diverging ever so slightly from the core material, I'm interested to see what path they take, because there's certain things that work very, very well in comics. They're usually the more hokey storytelling devices where suspension of disbelief is like, a mandate. You have to just accept that this is the way it's going. So certain beats that came from the comics could land a little bit differently in the show. So when Angstrom is going to show his hand, it could be next episode, but they could hold it till the end of the season. But he's not to be underestimated. I think that's the best way. This is torturous. You're an asshole. Why can't they just talk about the comics?
I'll let you. Don't worry. I'll let you get a little bit off in a second. Kev, your thoughts on Angstrom? Because again, we just haven't got a lot of him yet. Was this a big deal for you when he showed back up? And again, we've got to kind of, caveat that, Dan is here to kind of keep us warm on a lot of the things here. So again, I'll get excited because Dan's told me to be excited. But it has.
I'm so glad Dan has said that, to be honest, because like I'm burnt out on multiverse, to be honest, and like that's a lot of his stuff was from, and when it cut back to him for the post credit scene, I didn't really care all that much, to be honest, and I'm really glad he's going to be more significant, and like hopefully I'll care about him. But yeah, he hasn't really done a lot for me, to be honest, for even the first part of the season and up to now as well. I don't really care, and I'm, like I said, I'm a bit multiverse burned out with all the Marvel stuff at the moment.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I'm at with him.
Yeah, I hear you. And I think, to be honest, I think Everything Everywhere All at Once just kind of put a feather in the cap of multiverse storytelling. It both showed it up for how ridiculous it is, but also told us how amazing it could be done. And it's like, I don't need to see anything after this. That is, you completed the multiverse story. So, but I'm open to hearing new interpretations of it. And again, I trust this show when it has tropes. You know what I mean? Like, again, the love square, like maybe that is a bit too tropey, like standard comic book hero trope for me. But like, I do trust the likes of this and The Boys when they tip up to that line where it's like, here's what you're used to seeing in these stories, and then they just completely go left. So I'm happy to kind of keep the faith, but like I said, it is Dan who's actually keeping me invested in this story more than the show itself. Speaking of which, Dan, I'm gonna kind of put your skills to the test here. And kind of without spoiling, I want to give you an opportunity to get your comic book knowledge in there. And is there anything in particular, if you could give us maybe a teaser of something that maybe as we head into the penultimate episode next week, what should we what did you see in this episode, or what are you thinking that we should be paying attention to without telling us what it is, if that makes sense? Is there anything that we should be thinking about in the next few days before the next episode?
Yeah, and because we've already touched on the Angstrom stuff, I'm gonna go in a slightly different direction, because the Viltrumite stuff is the stuff that I really like in this show and in the comics. So I'm gonna put out a prediction for, without saying what it is, for the post-credit scene for the last episode. And I'm just gonna let everyone, let's see if they can ask a question. Has anyone wondered who's actually leading the Viltrumites?
Not really, because it's like, apart from like stuff that you've hinted at, again, I haven't even been thought about it. I think Craig's the most important person we've seen, but yeah, there's so many questions. We've only met like 4 or 5 of them, like, so yeah, there's an entire empire
There's a lot
there.
more of their mythology to come.
Right.
And it
I
goes
just
deep
assumed
into
it
what
was
we've seen.
who's the mustachio guy?
That's Craig, yeah.
Yeah.
But
I
what
just
the
assumed it was
Mustachio
him.
guys- Mustachio High Boy, yes. Craig's not the leader.
Okay.
There is a leader. We haven't seen him. We may not.
Okay.
Okay,
Cool.
so just that's the thing. Like, think of like what's the hierarchy and who would lead the Vulturites, and just let your imagination go wild there. Who would lead an army of incredibly powerful beings that value strength over anything else?
Okay. Okay. I'm very intrigued. I want the lion to come back. Do you remember the lion from season 1? He was awesome.
Battle Beast.
Yeah, Battle Beast.
Oh, he
Yes,
was
he was
great,
so
yeah.
cool. Yeah, but like no, Viltrum. Okay, I would be very up for like kind of I don't know if I like there's so much going on. I don't know if I could forgive them going off and doing a completely fully separate episode, but I'd love if they did something like the episode they did with Alan, where half the episode was just giving us, oh, by the way, here's what you need to know about Viltrum. Like, because we are underserved on that count, and the fact that we're not really even asking the question, that's something they need to bring us back, because that's the big evil, that's the big bad, that's the threat, that's where the action's going to be. So I'd love something like that personally. Let's touch on X-Men 97, because that came back, rebooted the iconic 90s animated series. We got the first 2 episodes this week. Obviously, spoilers are ahead, so if you haven't seen them yet, go watch the episodes and then you can come back and have a listen. In the first 2 episodes, we kind of like we're right back where we were. It is season 6 of the animated series with a lick of paint. Friends of Humanity are back. They've Sentinel blasters now. They see, the existential threat against mutants that drives this series is still very much real. We've got a new mutant in kind of Roberto here. We've got Jean trying to push Cyclops to a life beyond the X-Men. You've got I loved the whole stuff with Gyrick in there, kind of saying that tolerance is extinction, mutants are a fad. I loved the Bolivar Trask kind of element as well, even if Master Mold sounds like a bathroom cleaner that's in the Philip Bang family. Master Mold! But it's like an action. It's like a request. It's like Master Mold. You can be the master of mold. But yeah, like I loved though his kind of little speech. To the at the end of episode 1, where it's like, mutants are a threat. Like, if we tolerate humans, you're the evolution of the species, so this is why we can't accept you. I'm like, damn, in like 2 lines you've explained why humans hate mutants better than the animated series ever did. Like, that's a fantastic kind of summary of it. And then of course the big headline of episode 1 was the cliffhanger where Magneto was revealed to have inherited everything that Xavier owned in his will, even though Charles Xavier isn't dead. I don't know, maybe there's weird will rules going on there. In episode 2 then of course we had people getting powers and people not having powers. Rogue got the powers to deliver babies, which was cute. You had the Magneto trial. Of course, like every trial in this world, it ended up they've never done a trial where the courtroom hasn't exploded in the X-Men animated universe. But I love it. It's a great
contract
trope.
signing equivalent in wrestling.
Yeah,
It's like,
it is.
if
It
that
really is.
table doesn't get broken, I want my goddamn money back.
You've got Storm, of course. She got shot and her power got drained and she went off. You had Magneto being Magneto and giving a speech, but he's kind of continuing his redemption arc. And then like kind of that ended with talks of bringing the Genosha into the UN. You've got kind of the continuation of the Scott and Jean storyline, and then you've got kind of Rogue and Magneto as well. There seems to be a love affair there, and Gambit's going to have a thing to do with it. I blitzed the animated series because this year's my X-Men year. X-Men is something that I love. I loved as a kid, but I kind of grew out of it. Like, and then a couple of the bad X-Men live animated movies in the early to mid '90s just had me check out the series altogether, to the point that I'm going to lose my nerd cred here, okay, and admit one of the great regrets of my nerd career. And there's a reason for this, because I wanted to get back in and have an excuse to watch everything. I've never seen Logan. I've never seen that movie. And I know it's one of the best comic book movies ever, and I'm saving it for an exact reason, but I want to catch up with everything. So this year is my year. I fitted a rewatch, and I haven't watched this since the 90s, and I loved the X-Men cartoon back in the day as a kid. I fitted a rewatch of all 76 episodes into 20 days from March 1st, because that's the only time they gave us to watch it all, and I was definitely going to watch it. So I'm very much au fait with the series, but as much as I loved rewatching it and getting back into it, as a binge, one thing that it actually showed me was that at times it struggled with stakes, and I don't care about that. I'm not criticizing the show itself, because that it was a 90s kids TV show. You know what I mean? It's not supposed to. It's supposed to be action, 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 keep you excited. It's like drinking like fizzy drinks after school. You're like, ah, and that's what the show was, and I don't care, and I loved the nostalgia factor with that. But what I liked about this was that it had all of the it's for me, I really liked the X-Men 97 reboot because it had all of the kind of wackiness. It had all of the same character beats. It just felt like a season 6 of that show. But the animation was so much better. Obviously, season 4 was supposed to, if you don't know the story of the X-Men animated series, it was supposed to be the end of it. It was like very similar to Scrubs, in that they went and they did a finale in season 4, and then it got commissioned just because it was too popular for season 5. But it was on a shoestring budget, which, if you notice, the animation was pretty shit in season 5 comparatively. That's why, because they just didn't have the budget to kind of do it the way they wanted to. But there were a lot of highlights, but the quality did dip. This feels like it's really pulled back in. It feels like it's made with love by the creators. But I also really like the fact that there's stakes here. They're setting up character beats. They're setting it up as a TV series. It's not just adventure of the week. It's not just like, and even with, like, obviously they did have running storylines in the original animated series, but they weren't told as a full series storyline. They were more just like a 4 or 5 episode arc with to be continued. Whereas this seems set up like you've obviously got the Magneto storyline. You've got kind of Scott and Jean have a really defined arc. Storm, Rogue, and Gambit now as well. All have stuff to do. And then obviously Magneto is the headline of what's going to happen with Xavier and so on and so forth. I think the only criticism I'd have, or not criticism, but the only thing that I'd liked more of is more Wolverine and Beast, just because they're probably my favorite of them, and we just didn't get a lot of them. But I'm not worried about that because they're Wolverine and Beast, so we're going to see a lot of them throughout the course of the series. So I love this. I'm really excited with it. Kev, I want to check in with yourself. What were your thoughts on X-Men 97, the first 2 episodes?
Yeah, like you watched this as a kid. I didn't rewatch all 76 episodes though. I did a YouTube recap thing. There was someone
Much
had like
smarter.
a half hour
Yeah.
kind of recap. So I didn't even know how it ended with Charles getting assassinated. I was like, holy shit, they went there. That's pretty nuts. But when this was announced, I didn't I kind of just glanced over me. Like, I didn't really care a massive amount about it. And it was only really you mentioned that actually this week. I was like, oh yeah, sure, I'll give it a look and see what it's like. Blown away. I was like a kid again watching this thing. It was absolutely brilliant. I loved it. It kind of just brought me back to hating Cyclops being a whiny little bitch again, because that's all he really was for these first 2 episodes. But like, that's just his character to me. But yeah, like you said, the animation's brill. I really liked the Storm storyline now in part 2. I'm gonna wait for Dan because I know Dan's got a lot to say in this. I did have one complaint about it, but I'll let him maybe have his rant first before I say anything, because it might be in that potentially. But there was a bit of a flaw I saw in one of these.
Okay, I'm interested to see what that is. Yeah. Because
Go for it, Dan. Go, because I know Dan. Just to set this up, Dan has told us he has a lot to say on this, and we've deliberately not heard what he has to say. I'm dying to hear it though. That's why we saved Dan for the main event.
I think that message I sent you for context was a little bit premature because I just watched the first episode. I was half a bottle of Bushmills deep. I was pretty hot. So I definitely said that maybe a bit too early, because my grievances with the show, I think a lot of people are going to disagree with. Okay. But shows like this come down to one core thing that I think is really important. Is like the whole purpose of shows like this, and any show really, is to make money. And I think when you're given something like X-Men, and especially given it a reboot, something that is near and dear to so many people's hearts who grew up with it when they were 10 years old and now being middle-aged men, we have disposable incomes. And I just feel that if you want to give us a revisiting of something, just ask what that really, really means and deliver it. And the one thing that I got really annoyed with straight away was the animation. I don't like it. I said to my partner, it was like, why are the interns from Archer animating this? Like, what is going on? I didn't like that Newgrounds flash looking animation going in there. Yeah, granted, traditional mediums for animating is very expensive and not as time and cost efficient to use anymore. But this isn't written badly or anything like that, but the visual art form, it really put up a block for me. I didn't like the animation style at all because the original one was this amazingly detailed, really indicative of what 90s cartoons were. And like, let's face it, as a massive like Turtles and Thundercats fan myself, looking back at these cartoons, they're not actually good. And nostalgia plays a key role.
Yeah.
And the nostalgia was taken away from me personally because of this modern animation style. And it really hurt my viewing enjoyment of that first episode. Now, there were certain things that were great. I think Storm and Gambit, they just nailed them. I completely agree with Kevin about, or sorry, it was, I think both of you said about Wolverine and Beast. I know you said Wolverine and Beast, Jer, but I felt that they were like resigned to the back bench where they should really be front and foremost because they're the money makers. But yeah, my initial thoughts were I was a little bit disappointed because I couldn't get past that wall that I did put up for myself with the animation style. And as good as I know a lot of people are going to find it, it just hurt the initial process for me.
Interesting. Okay. I really like the animation because I felt like I hear what you're saying, and obviously for anyone who doesn't know, Dan is, Dan draws as well. Like he's a very talented artist too. So I'm never going to disagree with you when you talk about animation because you just know more than, yeah, but but again, I got into it because I felt like they were, it was two separate things. They were trying two separate things at once. They were trying to update it, but be retro at the same time.
Yeah.
So I can see that not working for people too, because they're two different visions at play. They're trying to be a 90s cartoon, but they want to be HD too. And I can, but I liked that because it's not X-Men, the animated series, it's X-Men 97.
Yeah.
So in that is an admission that we're doing a 90s cartoon show, and that's what this is, and that's what you're here for. So I'm okay with it. For me, what it came down to was the opening credits just were so key because that's the part we remember. That's the part where you think of watching that cartoon in the 90s with your bowl of cereal on a Saturday morning going, here we go, and the theme song hits and then the cool intro. And they got that right. And it was like, okay, I'm in, I'm back. So you do need time to settle into that. I don't know what they could have done though, because again, in watching the entire animated series again, it's fun to watch like the animation be. It obviously is iconic in itself, but like it's not good quality film, if that makes sense. Like it doesn't look good. If you made a TV show that looked like that today, it wouldn't be acceptable. But they weren't making it today. It was 30 years old, so that's fine. So I don't know what else they could have done. So I bought in kind of early. As soon as they got the intro right, I was all in. But I do hear you, no, and it does take time to buy in because it's the same show you remember, but it's not the same show. It looks quite different, and yeah, I think that's fair. Kev, what are your thoughts on kind of the animation and that kind of things? Was that what you were thinking of, or what was your critique? Sorry.
Kind of with you actually with the as far as the animation goes, it just feels like the 90s one with a bit more of a kind of I suppose a fresh coat of paint on it really more than anything else, and I think that's probably what they were going for. But that's when you see clips of the 90s show, it can be kind of jarring and it does look kind of old. And Dan's right, like there is a huge nostalgia value there as well. I've been like a big Turtles fan as well from the 90s, and like it's still, you go back and like it's not amazing the animation, but like there's just like this is what I grew up as a kid, and my love for it kind of exceeds that. But my big critique, I guess, of this was more of a plot points more than anything else to do with Rogue. in the club, and she's like, "Oh, I wish I could go out there and maybe touch people." And you're like, "Why didn't you put on one of those inhibitor fucking things and get rid of your powers?"
That's
Oh
right.
yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
Like,
Ro can now fuck. Like she's good to
yeah,
go.
just put on
Yeah,
that
I never
collar
thought
and
of
you're grand.
that.
Like,
Yeah. That's a great one. I'd never
I
thought of
really,
that.
really like that. Like next episode, she's gonna be looking for that inhibitor gun.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's because again, if like Rogue wears a collar that makes her able to fuck, it becomes something very different to a Saturday
yeah,
morning kids TV show. But also like I like Rogue, so I want her to be happy.
Well,
Dan,
you
you kind
obviously like Rogue because if she lost her powers, she could go pick up a baby or pet a dog, but you just go straight fuck.
but that's what she wants to do. No, that's not me. That's her entire plot arc. I've watched so many episodes where basically she's like, I just want to
Yeah,
fuck.
we all came up with that episode where she like lands provocatively in front of Apocalypse. The animators knew what they were doing as
They
well.
know,
You
they
know,
know, they know. Roga's like, yeah, she's Lois in a Family Guy level cartoon. Huh? I'm just saying, like, I am into Rogue. Dan, you kind of touched on episode 1 there, and that's your feelings after it. So, episode 2, obviously, much more meaty from a story point and set up kind
Yeah.
of the series. And then we obviously had the revelation of the clone of Jean Grey there at the end. What were your thoughts? Did that settle you in a bit more, and you kind of more back on side, or how are you feeling after the kind of taking both in?
um, like I said, my original thing was, you know, you have a whole generation of people who grew up watching this. So knowing that they're adults now, and instead of trying to appeal to a younger generation, which I thought the first episode was trying to do a little bit unapologetically, whereas this one did feel like it was very much for the fans of the original show. It had, and I'd love to for both of you guys to chime in this, but it felt like it had a more adult theme without going for the typical let's insert some violence or let's insert some sort of morality or sexuality sort of thing here. Granted, we did see a little bit of blood, which was a cardinal sin in 90s cartoon with Cyclops, but just the righteous anger that Magneto had and being able to make a coherent decision instead of going down the typical bad guy route, and for Executioner to be so vicious in his tactics, it was very close to, like, let's call it, it felt like it was a January 6th riots in the X-Men universe. There was a real storming the Capitol sort of element, which brought it from a kid show into they're addressing serious issues here. So my initial thoughts over my partial disappointment from the first episode were band-aided by the time I got into the meat of the second episode. I'm liking what they're doing with Magneto a lot. He, once again, go back to the source material. He was like a very reflective of the post-apocalypse Magneto. So I think you referred to him as Joseph. There was a whole what's the word word? Someone loses their memories. The word's gone from my head now, ironically enough.
like
But
amnesia,
well,
amnesia.
that amnesia. I kept thinking insomnia, but amnesia. Sorry, thanks, Milkev. There was an amnesia storyline where his personality changed a little bit, and there was a lot of interactions with Rogue. So this Joseph Magneto, even his aesthetic seems to be pulled into '97. So I'm interested. I'm invested in that. I want to see where they go. So I'm a lot more hopeful now going into episode 3, and I just think appealing to the original fans is where they're going to. Marvel need a win, and they're probably going to get that win through this. So just stick to the core fan base, guys, and we'll all be happy.
Yeah, I agree. I think an important thing to remember is one thing I've learned is I hate, like, for example, Apple TV have just done this again, and Apple TV are the worst for doing this. I hate when we get 2 or 3 episode premieres. I know we want and we're hungry for the content, but I like to spend more time with these people. I like to pour over it. But I think one thing that, and I spoke about this with Jerry when we were discussing the Bad Batch and how they opened with 3 different episodes. But they want you to, they do this for a reason with these, especially Disney Plus. They know episode 1's a little light and people are going to be pissed if we just give them episode 1. So if we give them that and like just bring everyone back and be like, hey, there's Wolverine, there's this guy, there's this guy. Oh, Roberto, he might be something, you never know. Jubilee's a bit more, and Morph's going to be a bit more in it. So like they had that kind of element to it. but then yeah, the business got real, like because episode 1 was cutesy, but it was light. But I didn't want this to be, because episode 1 I wanted to bathe in the nostalgia of it all and just maybe have a tease, and that's exactly what they gave me. And then episode 2, it's like, right, okay, here we fucking go. There's so many huge plot points. Like, if in any of the animated series, because they only have like, what, I think it's 12 or 13 episodes to play with, maybe 10. I don't know off the top of my head. But they only have X amount of episodes to play with, whereas they would have had 19 generally in the animated series. Storm losing her powers, that would have been a to be continued big huge plot twist. It was third on the list of this, you know what I mean? By the time episode 2 landed, so I'm big into this. I'm looking forward to this. Kev, are you back? I know you kind of only watched it initially because we were going to talk about it. Are you back in, or are you, where are you kind of sitting on X-Men 97 now? Is this going to be something one of your highlights every week? Is it going to be something you'll kind of dutifully follow because you started, or where are you kind of sitting?
Yeah, this is a show I didn't know I wanted till I watched it. So I'll be watching this now every week, and I think is about right. Like, it's the more mature themes are very welcome in it, and I think they know their audience of, like, these are people that watched this in the 90s. They're probably in their 30s now. We do have to appeal to them a certain way, and they probably know, like, there's shows like The Boys and like Invincible that are really pushing boundaries. So I think they're trying to push it probably as far as they can for a Disney Plus show, I'd say, as well. But yeah, I'm really enjoying it. I think I loved the I don't know, just like even just the Magneto going on trial for crimes against humanity is like, you never would really see that in a kids cartoon of and it's like what, 2 episodes in, and it's from like a previous season, and he's going up on trial now as well. Like, I just think the continuity is great there, and it's not like a serialized thing. It's more it's an ongoing story, which I really appreciate too. And like, it wants you, or leaves you wanting to come back to watch the next one then as well. So yeah, I'm very excited about this. And like I said, I didn't know I wanted it till I watched it.
Yeah,
which
that's
is great.
And look, it is huge for Marvel. I think this is with Deadpool versus Wolverine being Deadpool and Wolverine being the only Marvel movie being released this year, and Marvel in the position they're in, they have a lot of eggs in the X-Men basket, and they need this to be a win. This works in the right ways, and then it reminds you why you loved Marvel stories to begin with, but it never feels overly pandering either. And maybe it's a project that should, but it's made with so much love, genuine love, passion, and understanding for why people like this show. If it feels like a made by people who love the show type vibe, in the same way that kind of a show we talked about, Kev, the Last of Us, you know, with Craig Mazin being added to show running that, along with the video game creator Neil Druckmann, adding those elements to it, where it's like someone who's just fucking great at making TV, but having an outside voice, but actually loves the content, gave that an extra bit of punch with the extra stuff that they added. So I feel like this is setting us up, and it's going to put me in a really good, positive mindset ahead of Deadpool and Wolverine. And yeah, maybe this could be a huge win for Marvel. So very exciting. We may check back in on it before the end of the series and see if we're still feeling the same. But we're enjoying the chats as always. Thank you so much, guys. We'll look forward to only 2 episodes of Invincible. Yeah. Oh, for God's sake, we've just put the super team together. But that lineup, Kev Keen, pleasure to chat to you as always here on page 180, and we'll speak again next week.
Thank you so much.
Cheers.